Well, welcome. We are starting on our third page. 2 weeks we're going to be working on the third and last page of our 3-page questionnaire. And the reason it's going to take 2 weeks is because it is so detailed. The present, aging, life lessons, and legacies. Too much to cover in just one session. The people that wrote this actually broke it up into 3 parts, but we're going to go over just the first 2 parts today, and then next week we'll go over life lessons and legacies. But today we're going to do the present and aging. Some of us can relate to that. Some of us are too young to relate to that. However, if you're lucky, you experience aging, because the alternative is that you're not around to do that. And it's not so bad, you know, it could be worse. I always think that, you know, it's like, I fought aging. I didn't mind turning 30. No, I minded turning 30. But after I turned 30, I didn't mind turning all of the other decades. It was a piece of cake. 30 was hard for me. Everybody has a different turning point of where they're resisting. Hi, come on in. We're just getting started. So, in the part of the questionnaire that is about the present, it talks about wherever you are in life, not what you did before. However, as you're answering these questions, do you have any hobbies or special interests? Do you enjoy any particular sports? Well, that kind of, you know, makes you remember something from the life before. So even though you're going to be talking about the present, don't feel locked into that. Go on and write about the memories that conjures up. I was a short basketball player over at Cumberland County High School. What I lacked in height, I made up for in aggressiveness and speed. So I think we were playing Sparta, but it may have been Jamestown, when somebody decided to just take me out. And I went down, you know, it was like a hard knock, and twisted my shoulder behind me. I was 14. And when I was 27, almost 28, I never had a problem. I was sore for a while, you know. When I was 28, I woke up one morning and I couldn't get out of bed. It was my shoulder. When I finally got up, I had to get my kids to help me get dressed. I drove a stick shift car with one hand to get to the hospital, and it was bursitis brought on from an injury when I was 14. We are the culmination of our memories, you know. So just thought I'd throw that in there. That's something that came up. The sports being, you know, that I've never been into sports. I played golf because my friends played golf. I never understood, you know, how they could get so excited about it. You know, because to me it was all about just a social thing, being out, and the clothes. You know, I like to be color coordinated. Now I'm color coordinated in, you know, whatever goes with yard work clothes. When you are asking yourself these questions, the answers that you may give right off the top of your head when you first go through them may be different than when you go through them again and again. I can't tell you how many times I've read this in almost 3 years since I found this. and I found it to be a fascinating way to jar my memory, to write my story. And that's what we're all doing here today, my mission is to encourage you to write your story. In doing so, you may find yourself inspiring someone else to write their story. Maybe someone in your family. You're trying to find out stuff, or maybe you're in your enthusiasm, like with me, I'm very enthusiastic about this, so I talk about it, and in doing that, someone will be inspired to write their story. Someone I'm asking. Not Dave. I have yet to inspire Dave. He has been the main object of my quest for 3 years. And he still hasn't written his story. He's written 3 books, but not his story. I am not giving up. The question is, what is your typical day like now? You may think that's irrelevant to what you're doing, but remember that someone is going to read this, and they just might be interested. I think our days are, you think of them as ordinary, maybe. This is my day, this is what I do, But it's extraordinary in that it's your day. This is how, and you need to be able to explain how you live your life to someone. How is your day-to-day different than your routines of the past? Oh my gosh. Today it was no different. Today I felt as if, although I wasn't getting paid, I was working for myself, but I was just like really, I was out there raking, cleaning, rearranging plants. Yesterday at the nursery, I felt amazing because that's what I used to do. I could design your garden and have everything delivered that in the vision that we put together, and implement it if you wanted me to. That I did that, and it was incredibly satisfying. So today I felt that again, and I think I was a little bit more aware of it because of this question. Before I see you on Wednesday, I go over the questions again, see what I'm talking about that day. Sometimes I don't. I've read it so many times. But today, I was connected to the same person I was 10 years ago. That person whom I recreated myself. I was trying to not go out to work. I lived on top of a mountain, and it was treacherous in the winter. It was upstate New York. I thought, how can I make a living and not leave the top of the mountain for long periods of time? So I found a way to work up into the fall in designing and installing landscapes. And then I could write all winter. I had a wood-burning fireplace. If the lights went out, I was okay. I had candles. I made a life for myself on this mountain. And today, I felt like I was, even though it was for myself, I was designing a garden again. Had a good time yesterday, too. Is the present better or worse than when you were younger? It's different. As you get older, life changes. Remember, if you get older, you're lucky. So, is it different? Boy, is it different. And yet we are the same people. But telling how different your life is today than it was in the past, or how you hope that it will change and be better, or certainly more enhanced in the future? Interesting question. Interesting to me. This was interesting also. What do you do for fun? Oh my gosh. You know, I didn't learn how to have fun when I was a kid. So I've been a worker all my life, and that was fun. It's like, I know, sounds crazy, but my work had to be fun. I didn't know that about myself until I was of a great age. I don't know, 50, 55 maybe, that I didn't know how to have fun very much. It's an acquired thing. If you didn't learn it when you were young, and if you're not tuned in to, you know, it's like financially, they say to tithe, pay yourself. Well, you need to pay yourself in fun. Have some fun. Life is short. Boy, that was a powerhouse question for me. It opened up a lot of stuff. Who do you trust and depend on? That was easy. It wouldn't have been so easy a few years ago, but it was easy when I answered that. I went back and said, in the past, this is who I trusted and depended on. That changed. Then I trusted and depended on this person. And then I spent this part of my life not trusting or depending on anybody. Ooh, tough. Tough part of my life. Then it changed. Now I trust and depend on someone. It's a wonderful thing. That was kind of a black period for me to not trust or depend. I wrote it all down. And you have to make those decisions, whether those things are important to you to write down or not. What things are most important to you now? Well, that also changes. What things are most important to you now? Why are these things important to you now? And how have your dreams and goals changed through your life? Wow, I took pages. At first I just took, I just like made little headlines. And then I went back because how my dreams and goals changed. Wow, that was interesting. When you're young, your dreams and goals are small. When you're in school, your dreams and goals grow larger. You're encouraged to think bigger. And during your adult life, when you're working, you're having your family, your dreams and goals shift. And if you have children, your dreams and goals sometimes shift to those children. And you kind of lose yourself. If you're lucky, you get yourself back. When the kids are all taken care of. That's why grandchildren are so incredibly fun and different, because basically they're not your responsibility. You just get to have fun, and then you walk away and go back to your life. If you're lucky. What do you see? Hold up a mirror. Look in the mirror. What do you see? We do not see ourselves as other people see us, ever. We cannot see ourselves through someone else's eyes. It's very interesting to me what you see. Now, before I had my cataracts removed, I saw a different person. And when they took off one, in a day I went down to a new mirror with a great light, and it scared me to death. Because I could see so good. Before that, I couldn't see myself. And I'm not asking you to do an inward sight. I'm just asking you to look in the mirror and see who you see. I hope that when you look in the mirror, you will like what you see. Or if you don't, get a haircut. Change the color of your hair. Change your makeup. Get new glasses. Whatever. If you think that'll make you happy. If you like to look in the mirror. I was fortunate enough to have a mother-in-law that worked as a beautician. She was Lithuanian, lived in Brooklyn, started apprentice work when she was 13 or 14, never took a test, classes, never went to beauty school. She was an apprentice. She went to work, washing hair, sweeping up. Then somebody let her roll up a permanent, let her do things. She learned on the job. By the time I met her, she'd been very successful in life with beauty shops and big fancy hotels on the Jersey Shore. And she decided to retire early from all that, to have some fun, but she couldn't give it up, so she turned her little front porch into a tiny little beauty salon where she kept at it, are you ready, until she was 77. It's the kind of thing you can do forever. I watched her look in the mirror every day. Because you may think the beautician is looking at you, but they're looking at themselves. They live and work in front of a mirror. Sometimes they've turned you around, and you're looking the other way. But they're looking at themselves. They have to be just so, or they should. My mother-in-law was an inspiration in so many ways. I loved her work ethic. We were a little contentious with each other. I had married her son. That was like I was never going to be enough. But she was an incredible inspiration. She trusted me enough to say one day, she said, could you come for tea when nobody's here? And I said, sure. So I went down and she made the tea, and she said, now I need you to answer this because I know you will be truthful to me. You will tell me that she trusted me. First time I ever knew that she trusted me. And it was a very important thing to her. She said, should I get plastic surgery? You may all think that's just so vain. But remember, she lived her life in front of the mirror, and she'd started to sag. And she thought, and I said, well, let's see. Let's pick it up. Let's see what you'd look like. So I get behind her, and I said, you want me to scotch tape this up? Get a better look. No, she said, just hold it up there. So we'd look at her, and I said, I think you should do it. I think that your father lived to be 96. Your mother lived a long time. You have old genes, and you're going to live a long time, and you have the money to do this. So you need to do it, because I think it'll make you happy. Oh, what a lovely day that was. I helped her make the decision. But then she asked her daughter, who lied to her and said, no, Mom, we love you just the way you are. Well, of course they loved her just the way she was, but she wanted to look better. She wanted to look younger. And she was probably 60. She lived to be 93, and she just regretted every day not having had plastic surgery when she was 60. It may seem like a trivial, nonsense thing to you, but it was all about trust. And when I was answering these questions, I remembered that. And when I thought about the mirror business, you know, I have a connection to mirrors. When my husband retired from the military, we were in New Jersey, and we went up to New York, and we bought a very large country inn business. Big business. But it was nothing when we bought it. Just a building with stuff in it. There was no business. We bought it, and we worked 10 years and paid off our mortgage, improved the property, built a landmark business that's still there today. In the big dining room, which was ugly beyond compare, paneled and Luan paneling, dark here. And when we opened our business, the night we opened our business, we had $17 in our pocket because we'd used all our money to buy this business and the little bit of stock that we had to buy, and put $100 in the drawer. And my husband had $17 in his pocket. Talk about going out on a limb. Well, I decorated the big dining room. So we had a 250-seat restaurant, so with that country inn. It wasn't just a few rooms, but it was a big bar downstairs with a catering barn and this big dining room and 9 guest rooms with private baths. So it was a hardest work I've ever done. But one of the fun things was decorating it, and I decided to do mirrors because I had brought with me an antique mirror from a plantation we lived in Georgia that we paid $75 a month to live in a plantation house on 300 acres that was owned by the Miami Land Company for the pecans that were back on the acreage. But when we left there, they said, take anything you want out of the house because we're going to bulldoze the house when you leave. So I took the dining room set and this incredible mirror, just a beautiful thing. And I decided to do other mirrors. So I did the entire dining room with mirrors. People loved it. And the lights were reflected in it. But you couldn't go from the lobby through the dining room without looking at yourself. You know? And if you're working in the public, you want to, be sure that if you got your lipstick on, is your hair combed, all that. Mirrors, So when I went to look in the mirror, I saw, at that time I was like 73-year-old woman. And I thought, gosh, what does that, it's like, where did the time go? And then, I got my cataracts done and I was shocked. Oh, I thought, well, Dave, don't get yours done. Because then he'd be able to see me. So he didn't pay any attention. He did. He got it done. And I said, so Dave, how do I look? It's all about me. Okay, that mirror that you're looking into. Just, like, this is who you are. Don't try to see yourself as others see you. Just what you see. I like myself better some days than others. I hate myself I hate to look in the mirror if my hair is not cut. I start to get shaggy and I've got cowlicks and it sticks out like this, and I've forgotten to get my hair cut. Anyway, interesting introspective about looking in mirrors. Some of you can remember more what it was like to be 20 or 30 than what it was like 10 years ago. But this question on aging, about what do you remember, it breaks it down. What do you remember about your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s? With me, I'm in my 70s, so my memories. I'm not gonna write about the 70s. I'm gonna write all about up through the 60s, how it was like, what it was like to be 60. And what events stand out in your mind, and how is each age different from the one before it? That's really, really deep. You could write chapters on that once you get started. And I hope you're all started to some extent writing something. Some of you are. And I'm privileged to read some of it. It was great. If you could go back, there are some ages we don't look forward to. What birthday were you the least enthusiastic about, and why? Oh, that was easy. I hated 30. I hated turning. I just like, oh no, I was hanging in. I just want to be 20, in my 20s. But time has a funny way of moving forward, whether you're ready or not. So, if you could go back to any age, what age would it be and why? Well, I didn't even like that question. I don't want to go back. Theoretically, it wasn't even important to me. So, you decide. Every one of us, as we answer these questions, will answer them so different because we are all, our experiences are different. We will have an incredibly different way of answering these questions. And of course, now you know how I feel. How do you feel now about growing old? And what's the hardest thing about growing older, the best thing? Some of you aren't old yet, so you can only answer what's the hardest thing about growing older, or the best thing. Well, men and women have different answers to that because we are men and women. And women sometimes write the same thing, the best thing about growing older. What were your parents like when they got older? Well, if you were privileged to know your parents, this is a way to include them in your story. On page 1, it asks you about your parents, and now it's asking you about what were your parents like when they got older. What were they like to you? Will be different than what your brother or sister would say, or what your parents would say. If you can't ask them, you have to just be objective about that. What were your parents like? How did they age? I can tell you one thing. If you need a hearing aid, you need to get it. Get it sooner rather than later, because I watched my father become distant because he would not get a hearing aid. It was a masculine thing. He wasn't going to wear them. He was the life of the party. Everybody wanted my father at their, at every civic meeting, at every group, on every bus, until he couldn't hear anymore. And when he couldn't hear, he pulled back and he became distant. And he lost part of his life. In doing so, he took my stepmother with him into that veil of silence. Because he couldn't hear and he wasn't participating, he took her with him. And I didn't see them often. They lived in Illinois, but I observed this, and I'm interested about how people handle growing older and the things that we need to do to enhance our lives. Remember, I'm the one who said, absolutely get a facelift. And I'm saying, I think hearing aids are important. In order to be a part of life, you have to hear what's going on. I think maybe men have more trouble with that than women. That's just an observation. My parents, my mother knew how to have fun. And as she got older, the things She lived in Florida. She bought a place on the water. My mother loved to fish. She had so much fun fishing. And then she branched out into shrimping and crabbing, all the things that grew in the water, lived in the waters around her. And I would go see her down in Orange Park, Florida, and I would think, gosh, Mom, I think there are alligators out there in that water. She'd say, yep, there are. And I'd say, but you're going out there, you're like wading out with your little shrimp net, and you're standing out there in that water, and you're baiting for crabs, around the dock and everything. Don't you think the alligators might come up? She said, don't worry about it. I can handle myself. Oh, okay. And I went back to my home and left it alone and hoped that my mother wouldn't get eaten by an alligator. And she didn't, Someone who knew my mother very well said, if an alligator had taken a bite of your mother, he would have spit it out. So my parents, my father lived away from me most of my life. And my mother lived nearer to me most of my life. And she was a drinker, a smoker, and a party girl. She loved having a good time. She surrounded herself. People were drawn to her like a magnet. And so there were always people around that, and then she had a lot of fun. And she was great at entertaining. And she was also good at getting you to go home, because if she was tired, she would say to her husband, well, Bill, I think we'd better go to bed and let these good people go home. I've heard her say it many times. It was like, oh my gosh. She could get away with that. That was okay. Do you have any expectations at points in your life about what growing older would be like for you? Those of you who have not grown older yet, that's your question. But you have an opportunity to observe how other people who have grown older are living their lives. So you have someone to watch. I watched my mother-in-law. I said to her one time, I was going to work, and I was working at a place that was a certain aspect of my job was annoying. There was a certain group of people that I had to do business with, and they were so annoying to me. And she said to me, when something bothers you, divorce yourself of it. Just, those are negative people. They're bringing you down. They're making you dread going to work, which you otherwise enjoy. So, divorce yourself. And I thought, how do I do that? So eventually, I quit that job, and I went out on my own. I did the same job, but I did it myself. And then I didn't have to deal with the annoying aspect of my job, because I would interview you before I worked for you. And then if I thought, well, we're not going to get along, I needed to say so. So, and I did, many times. Backed out as gracefully as possible of doing that job and recommend them to someone else. Let them annoy someone else, my competitor maybe. This is aging. Remember, this part of the paragraph, this is aging. And so it's talking about all the aspects of aging. If you lived another 20 or 30 years, what will you do? Do you want to live another 20 or 30 years? I want to live till I die. Laugh till I cry. Fill my cup until my number's up. Live, live, live until I die. I think about it. I think about, okay, what am I going to do? If I live this long, will I have enough money? How will I get along? I bought the house in Fairfield Glade, and it's 3 stories. I'm going to climb the stairs, make Dave climb the stairs to go down to the walkout to his office, go upstairs to our bedroom. We're going to do that until we can't do it anymore. Then we have a whole floor, and this is how I looked at this house, that has a whole house on it. And then when we get guests, they can go upstairs or downstairs. But we will have that main floor that has no stairs. That's how I plan. And my grandmother, Webb, lived to be 96. And she did go blind, but she worked up until she died. Because even blind, she could crochet granny squares, you know. And so she made pot holders, pillows, afghans, and she said, and she lived in one of the nursing homes here. I'm not sure which one, I can't remember where it is, but if you said, I'm coming, what do you need? What do you want? She would say, bring me yarn. So you would buy up all this yarn for her, and she had a box of yarn in her little closet, and when she rang the bell, it wasn't for something she needed physically, it was for the nurse to come and pick out the color of yarn that she would put on her granny square. What a great example of living your life no matter what. You know, she was making those granny squares, keeping her hands busy, and they were arthritic. I know what that means now because I have a little bit of it. So I think about her and her little arthritic hands and how she could crochet still. And the nurses would pick out the next color of yarn. Cool. What do you look forward to? Well, remember, I'm 76 and I look forward to every single day, because if no matter what, because I like projects, I like to be involved, but I am writing my story. So when I have time, and certainly in the winter I have more time than any other part of the year, I sit down with my book and I write my story right in it. So the pages begin to increase and increase. And I don't know how I can give you except to share my enthusiasm for what this means, not just to you, but to your children, your grandchildren. That's what I hope to share with you, is my enthusiasm for doing this. So, we've gone through most of the questions in 2 paragraphs, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Does anybody have any questions about, or want to share something about what they're doing now, what you're writing about? Well, think about it, and just interrupt at any time. But while I was, look in my bag. I have a note here. I was jotting down the books that I have purchased over the years and I left it.
Before you forget,
Oh, thank you.
thank you so much.
No, thank you. Just do a little business. There were almost 30 books that I've purchased since I began to write. Because that's how I taught myself to write, by doing it. I just picked up 2 because they were lightweight. But they really kind of spoke to me about what we're doing here. This is Writing as a Road to Self-Discovery. How to reach within yourself to find the words and the stories that help you understand yourself and your world. Part of my library. And I did not buy this early on when I was learning to write. I bought this as I began to write. I began to understand that I was unfolding. I was becoming more aware of myself. And it was A Road to Self-Discovery. And this was incredibly interesting to me, writing your life, putting your past on paper. I'll pass these around if you like. Oh, here's my little notebook. I did bring it. I couldn't write them all down, but because there were so many, I had no idea I had purchased so many books. In the beginning, I bought books on fiction. Fiction Writers Workshop, Get That Novel Started, The Art and Craft of Novel Writing, Writing Dialogue, The Art of Compelling Fiction. Those books are meaningless to me now. I am not a fiction writer. I write the truth. The truth, whether it's my story or someone else's, is better than any fiction that you could ever write. I just really believe that your story, every single one of you, that your story is better than fiction. I did buy books that meant something to me. A Beginner's Guide to Getting Published. Very interesting book. Conducting Interviews taught me a lot about how to conduct an interview to get you to tell me what I wanted to know to write your article, an article about you. I found that to be extremely interesting. Writing for dollars. Remember, I didn't want to leave the top of the mountain. I had to find a way to make a living. So I taught myself with these books and lots of classes like this. I lived close to a community college, and every time they would have classes open to the public on writing, I would attend. Some of them were absolutely, totally worthless. No, many of them were worthless. They were conducted by professors who had never done anything but teach. I do not want my disdain for that to become paramount. However, you can hear it, that those who do, I don't know, I forget what that saying is, but those who can't do teach. So what really was great was when a real published writer would come and share how to make yourself stay focused, how to deal with an editor, all the nitty-gritty, because that's what I was interested in at that time. And then I bought Handbook for Magazine Article Writing. Very valuable to me, because for years I made my living by writing for magazines. And I didn't know how to deal with it. The first time I was ever offered a contract, I took whatever they offered. I thought that was a pretty good deal. As it turned out, that's what they offer, and they're ready to negotiate with you. That's just what they all offer. And as soon as I found out, then I would say, well, I had something else in mind, and I had a word count on what my article would be, and this is how much I want per word. And I had to learn that, because I didn't know any of that in the beginning. So, I was just thrilled that this magazine was actually going to publish my work. Boy, they got that for nothing. Country Journal, I don't know if you remember that magazine. It was a beautiful magazine. And I think during the, must have been the late 90s it went under. How to sell and resell your magazine articles. See, this is what interests me. But I have, next week, I have just purchased, I think, 5 new books that I ordered off of the used books in Amazon on legacy writing, on, you know, the subjects that we are dealing with, so that I can share those books with you. I bought a book called Shocked, Appalled, and Dismayed. And it taught me how to complain in a positive way to get what I wanted back. I was unhappy, and so I was communicating my unhappiness, but I wasn't just railing at something. I was just shocked, appalled, and dismayed when I saw your shoddy product that I had paid good money for. Anyway, then I bought a book called A Travel Writer's Guide. And that helped me a lot because I spent 12 years of my life on an airplane. Because I had to get to the lecture forums where I was hired to be a speaker. Now this is how that works, in case you're interested. You have a book, and you have a subject that you're an expert on. I am an expert on lasagna gardening. I invented the name. I didn't invent the system. Mother Nature did. Just go to the forest and see how she layers organic materials, and they decompose and create humus, and into that humus, without any help from men or bossy women, and no rototillers or any kind of machinery, Mother Nature builds these layers of organic material, and the humus is decomposed organic material, and into that seeds fall. And new trees and wildflowers and berries come up on the forest floor without any help. And so Mother Nature, and I give Mother Nature credit for lasagna gardening. It's just that I turned it around and made it in a language that today's world, people who are overworked, their time is so incredibly precious, and yet they still want to garden. I've shown them how during the last 12 years. I've done nothing but talk about lasagna gardening. And I had to travel, so now I have several books on the subject. But in the beginning, it was just one little book. But I was an expert, so I sent out my resumes to these big home and garden shows, mostly. And then they would get back to me, and they would offer me a contract to come and appear with my book. And then I would get billing, and people would come to hear me speak and buy my book. And I had in my contract a little booth near the stage, and I would be signing books in my little credit card machine. I bought a book once, and it said, "Ink yourself," INC, incorporate yourself. That was so incredibly important to me. And so, I got my ducks in a row. I incorporated myself. And I did what it said in the book, and I got out and got on the road, and I made deals for my little booth where I sold books. So they paid me to come and sell my product. And then I took a note from Tupperware and Avon, parties, people that have parties in your home. And their motto is to hold the party, and book 2 from each party. It's a pyramid, book 2 from everyone. And I thought, every time I go out and do a lecture, I have to be ready to book myself somewhere else. So as I made my way from the East Coast to the West Coast, by doing that, I had to go off the mountain to do that. I had to somehow get myself down off that mountain in the winter and to an airport like Newark, New Jersey, or someplace like that, to get out off the mountain. I thought, oh, this is not working. But evidently it did, because I'm safe. I made it. I only slid off that mountain 2 or 3 times. This is, if you need to know something, everything you ever wanted to know has already been written about. And you can buy it for less than $1 because you have to pay $3.99. Or if you know me, you can take it, you can borrow it from my shelf. I live at 205 Lakeview Avenue. Call me, and it's like, oh, can I borrow this book? I mean, you betcha. I couldn't believe how many books I had. Now, writing your life, putting your past on paper. She dedicated this to I Remember Friendship. And the first chapter, you learn by writing. The more you write, the more you can write. But like anything else, the more you do something, the better you get at it. The more you write, the more you can write. The more you write, the better you write. You know, I started writing back when I didn't have a computer. When I got that magazine, when I got the magazine article, it had to go in. They wanted it sent in electronically. I didn't know what that meant. So my neighbor, who was very well versed, she helped me. And then one of my son-in-laws said, what do you need? And I said, well, I need like a cheap computer. And I didn't know to say, not too cheap, it has to be able to handle internet. And he got me a computer that was nothing more than a word processor. I still could not communicate electronically. So I've been there. Okay, there's a chapter that says, give yourself permission. Oh, I love that. We need to give ourselves permission. And how many times have I said to you, keep a notebook? That is one of the most important things you can do. I don't know about you, but I forget things. But today, I was cleaning up and landscaping my property that I purchased. And I'm trying desperately to get it ready to be photographed so that then it can be rented and or sold, one or the other. The whole point was an investment. And I'll be working there, just working along at something, and I'll think of, because that's when the memories come. And if I didn't have my little notebook handy, I wouldn't be able to remember, because by the time I get through, or maybe till I go to the next room, I have forgotten what that was. Now the other day I didn't have my notebook, I didn't have a pocket, so there was a stack of paper plates, thin ones, like you get at a pizza parlor, you know. So when I went home, I had a stack of pizza plates that I had written on, because I worked about 7 hours that day. And I was alone, so, you know, it's like things, I was remembering things. I've written on napkins, toilet paper, all kinds of things, you know. It's better to have a notebook. Maybe you remember I said about keeping that family tree, the one with roots. You are the taproot. Start with yourself, and then go out in the roots of the tree and note your parents, your grandparents on both sides, your great-grandparents, if you know. They're all roots of the tree. And most of them would be gone, you know, for most of us. All right, but the limbs of the tree, those are the next generation, children, and then the grandchildren come off of those limbs. Easy to do. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you know, I keep out everything in this bag. I can hardly walk because I've been in that garden all day today. But this is it. This is how easy. So you can see I'm no artist. But here's the earth, and here are the roots, and here are the branches. And that was so much fun to do that. And my cousin Linda inspired me to do it. She had one that was incredibly well done with tiny, tiny little letters printed that was just like a piece of art. And it was so cool. She had it framed. And I think she may have duplicated that and given that to all her kids and grandkids as Christmas presents. So that's just a really interesting thing to do. Anybody have any questions, or anybody want to share anything? No? You don't get tired of listening to me? Okay. So, when, in this little book, Writing Your Life, Putting Your Past on Paper, this acknowledged many of the things that I've told you that I feel that are simple little life changes that you can make to get you writing your story. Accomplishments. Very important, difficult for some people. I remember once being in a group and they asked us about accomplishments. What do you do best? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what is it? And by the time it came around to me, the only thing I could think of that I did really, really well was make jam. That's it. I couldn't think of anything else. But when I got home and the pressure was off to have to say that in a group setting where they were like saying, okay, you're next, what are your accomplishments? Now, I look back and I think, okay, you give yourself credit. These are your accomplishments, not the least of which is your family. You know, I take my children, that was such an accomplishment for me. But let me just say, this was the first line, and she said, no one, including me, thought I had a chance. And then things, these are little things, I might, for next week, I might have to copy this and get it back to you. The most difficult test I ever passed, the competition, frightened me. These are like beginning sentences so that you finish them. It was the most demanding position I filled. She said she could not have done it without me. My mother kept a scrapbook. The prize changed my life. We have been friends forever. We started out in the red. Remember the $17 in my husband's pocket. My children come home. Oh, my children come home. I am so honored that my children actually want to come home, spend time with me, take vacation days, precious vacation days, and they have to spend the money to get to Tennessee because nobody lives here. They depend on me. They were prouder than I was. Oh, I'm going to have to copy this. I'm going to do something. I'm going to turn down the page. Ooh, it's my book. I bought it. I paid for it. It's even getting yellowed. I've had it so long. Interesting page. I think I need to print this and give it out to you because this will encourage you to write. When you are writing, I know some of you are writing. But when you are writing, it doesn't have to be for publication. It can look to you like a series of notes. But remember, Dennis's mother when she said, "We found my father's notebook." And he had been writing. It was every day, not much, a word, maybe the weather, something. And they were flipping through it, and toward the end, there it was. The notes on what it felt like to lose his father and then to be alone. That was so precious to her, those notes. Think how precious your papers will be to somebody someday. Yes?
My husband's grandfather had a brother that went off to war, had a bunch of brothers that went off to war. He didn't because he had an ear problem, they wouldn't let him go. But the one that went, James Edward, that didn't come back, my father-in-law is named after him. His name's Edward Lynn Cable. And my husband is named after him, my son is named after him. And he gave his brother a gun. before he
I want you
died.
to tell this story over again.
Okay.
Because I don't think that everybody can hear you. All right, but tell us again. Start from the beginning. James Edward.
Okay. My grandfather-in-law's brother, James Edward, went off to the war. There was actually like 11 in their family, and my grandfather is the 11th son, or the 7th son of a 7th son. And his brother, James Edward, went off to war and did not come back. And then he took the Edward and named his son, his second son, Edward Lynn Cagle. My husband is named Edward Lynn Cagle Jr. My son is Edward Lynn Cagle III. And we have a gun that he gave to Leonard, my grandfather-in-law, when he left, and said, "Hang on to this. It's the most valuable thing I own." And so it's been passed down. We have it in a lovely case in the bedroom, and it's put up, and it's just a very pretty gun. And so we had a picture of him in it. Well, then his grandmother says, "You know what to put in there? Let me get you the letters that I have that we wrote back and forth with him when he was in the military."
How special.
Then the rest of the family starts in. We've got letters from almost every member of the family that they wrote back and forth with him. All of his medals, his Purple Heart, like everything in this case now. And when you read the letters, I mean, none of us have ever met this guy. My father-in-law never met him. And it's like you go back in time, and get to know somebody that you would have never known at all, except for to sometimes see a picture in a photo album, not really be sure who he is.
Right.
But, and of course it breaks your heart and you cry and you cry and cry as you read it, because it's like when I get home, I want to ride around that new car you've got, and I can't wait to see your son. Everybody else is writing me, telling me what a fool you are over this new baby, and of course that's Chip's Uncle Brent's, and I mean, it's just, those letters are the reason that I came to this class, was because, I mean, what if my kids could give that to their grandkids and be like,
Exactly.
"Here's this lady you don't even know, but, she was something to us."
Now those letters, in his own hand, in his own writing, because we have the ability to duplicate them over and over and over again and preserve the originals under glass or special papers, but to be able to duplicate that first before you put them away, that is precious. Now, if I had those letters, I would take copies of them and I would insert them in my journal, because this is the reason that I've begun to write my memories. And then it can be like, the words themselves can be the cover, it can be on inside pages, it can be another letter between chapters. How precious is that, to have someone's own words? That's a very special story. Very special. I just love it when somebody shares their stories and why they're coming here. I just love that, and how incredibly lucky you are and all the generations to come, that you not only have them, but that you're preserving them. I think you're lucky. Your kids will be lucky. That's how I would use them. Anyone else have something like that? You know, that made me remember the little notebook. Little tiny notebooks used to be bound in leather. You got them at the 5 and 10 down in Crossville, the building that's just past the courthouse. That was a 5 and 10 there. I believe someone told me it was named Walker's. Am I right?
I believe so.
Walker's.
I believe so.
But the ordinary little tiny spiral, or no, they were bound, little notebooks that you kept all of your journal in. People kept their business in their shirt pocket. And those little books were the same size as your shirt pocket, in leather. Now, I have that. I don't have much from my grandparents, but I have that. And inside, in pencil, is my grandfather's purchases, expenses, intake. When he sold the coal mine, sold the farm, sold the boarding house, moved into town and bought Neil's Cafe. So that was his record of Neil's Cafe. So as I was writing his story, all that I know of his story, it did not go without me thinking about that little book written in his own words. So in his little pencil, not written, there was no words in it except at the top. It was all figures, numbers. Yeah.
I think, I don't know, probably 15, 20 years ago, a guy wrote a book called The Blessing.
Yeah.
And that book by John Trent, and I can't remember the other writer, but talking about how important it was to leave a blessing to your children, your grandchildren. So I've got 2 sons, and at transitional moments in their lives, I've always written to them, like when they turned 13, I wrote something. When they turned 16, you're fixing to see the world in a new way with wheels, you know. When they graduated from high school, I gave them a compass. And I gave them a book, True North,
Oh, yeah.
called Putting First Things First, True North, and I taught them about, may you find the true north in your life, you know. And but I've always thought it was important at those transitional moments, but I think there's a whole lot, I mean, this class lets you know there's a lot of other times. I mean, every day there's occurrences in your life that you need to leave to someone.
Exactly.
A legacy. Last week I wasn't here, and on Wednesday my daughter-in-law was having a baby. So I wrote, sitting in the waiting room, I wrote a letter to my son and daughter-in-law, and telling them what this moment I felt like was going to mean to us and what it was going to mean to them. And you know, I really feel that that's important, that we leave those thoughts behind. I mean, it is the legacy, it is the blessing that you pass on.
An extremely important part. It makes me wish that I had known about this earlier in my life. But now I've become very introspective in order to try to piece together some of those moments. My oldest daughter called to tell me, I was living in New York, she's in Georgia. I've never been in the right place. And she called to say, Mom, guess what? And I thought, oh, she's going to tell me she's pregnant. And she said, no. She said, but we made the decision to get pregnant. I said, too much information. I don't want to, tell me when it happened. Tell me when it's due. But every month she would call me and give me an update. So I should have been prepared. But I started to fret. This is vanity. Pure vainness on my part. I fretted about being a grandmother. I said, it's going to happen eventually. And one day she called to say, we're pregnant and the baby is due on such and such a day. And then I revved up my anxiety you know, and I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh, I dyed my hair. The next 9 months I lost like 15 or 20 pounds. I bought a red gabardine long coat with matching gabardine trousers and a white turtleneck sweater. And then my father said, I want to buy you something really special for Christmas, and you know, because we'd not been close, and he was always known for being a little thrifty. So he said, I want you to have something you've always wanted. And I thought about that out, and I said, I'd like a pair of real cowboy boots, good leather, you know, already softened up, something, get ready. So I went out and I paid $300 of his money for those boots. It was all about vanity, worrying. My daughter's having this baby. It was the most important time of her life. And I am caught up in what color my hair is and if I'm going to look too old and blah, 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 blah. It was all about me. So finally, the baby comes, and I couldn't wait. And I said, well, tell me when I can come. And she said, well, Bill's mother is here now. And I said, well, you know, tell me when you get really tired and I'll come. So a week or so went by and she would call and she said, Mom, I'm so tired I can't talk. I'm so exhausted. The baby has colic. So I got on a plane in my red gabardine coat, my matching trousers, and white turtleneck sweater, and my hair was frosted on my cowboy boots. Headed for Georgia to see my new grandchild. And I got there, and she looked at me and she says, Mom, and I said, oh, let me just change. I changed because that baby cried for 4 months. And I just said, go to bed. And let me get in my sweats and go to bed, you know. It's like, Grandma's here. She said, I don't know, that's just not the right name. And I said, well, I don't care what you call me. Just call me anything. But call me if I can come and see this kid. Because he is really, I mean, when he does stop crying, he's really cute. So that was my first of 9 grandchildren. Everyone was so precious, and I wish that I have the memory of those children, and I've been jotting down because I want them to know what their little lives meant to me. I know it was funny and I was vain, but Alex was the first, and I was just like, had to get over it, you know? And I did all those things, which he later found to be extremely funny, because I told him the story not too long ago. And I said, it was just like, I am so embarrassed. And they call me a lot of things. Some of them call me Grandma, some call me Grams. Grandmama, the most ostentatious name of all, is Grandmama. I thought, I don't have any French children or grandchildren. What is this? You know, it's like, but no matter what, and thank God for Facebook, because I can share in all those. It's a wonderful thing. You just have to be careful about what you say. Don't let them know you're there. I am the stealth grandmother, and I am in, and I am looking at your pictures. So I know what you're doing, and it is so funny. I mean, recently I thought that my youngest granddaughter, who was a freshman at University of Tampa, we were all just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. We thought, she is not going to make it down there all by herself. You know, she's going to be homesick, and she's pretty spoiled, you know. We were all waiting for the news that Caitlin is back in New Jersey. And one day I go on Facebook and it says, under Caitlin's name, back in New Jersey. So I'm thinking, Dave, Caitlin is back in New Jersey. And he says, yeah, I knew she'd never last down there. I said, well, you don't know that. Maybe she did. I know. We didn't even know she was smart enough to get into college. So that was a surprise. You know, but then we found out she's going to nurses training and she's going to the University of Tampa. I think it was all about the son. you know? I think she just wanted to be down there where she could get a lot of sun. But she wasn't. She didn't leave school, thank you very much. She was home on some sort of break, fall break or something. Before Thanksgiving, they got this little break, and she just went back to New Jersey for a few days. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's keep Caitlin there. But I think about the day she was born and how we almost lost her. She was born and she ingested the umbilical fluid, and she was like, had gone limp, and they rushed in and saved her, but then we spent 2 years wondering if she was brain damaged, you know, because you don't know, so you're watching and watching. And so then she became a teenager, and I was sure that it was a belated brain damage that was making her act like that. I don't know. Anyway, she's just a wonderful, wonderful, oh my gosh, I just love thinking about it. And I need to write to her and tell her how special the day was. And I wasn't even near. I was on one of those trips, and I couldn't get home. I was anguished, like my youngest daughter is having her first child, and as it turned out, her only child, and I'm not there. You know, I have given myself a break, but a few years ago I didn't give myself many breaks. But I learned through this process, because it kept telling me, give yourself a break. And so I've been doing that. I mean, everything's going to work out. These are grandchildren, and I have little to no control over anything. So I need to just like do little things that they will remember me fondly. Write them letters and tell them what it has meant to me all of these years of their growing up. Each one, I can write volumes because I have 7 children and 9 grandchildren. So there's a book. And remember what I said, you can't give one more words than the other. It will come back to haunt you. Actually, you may be gone before they read this, but you will hear them all saying, Caitlin got more words than I did, or Missy B got more words than I did. Oh gosh, no, I don't want that to happen. So I write the same word count. It's like, check your word count, be sure. I know that seems so trivial, but we live in a trivial world. I do anyway. Anybody have something they want to share with me today? Yes.
Sometimes it leads to a mystery, too.
Oh, I need you to talk into this microphone because I can't hear you very well.
Thank you. I said sometimes it leads to a mystery that you don't know the answer to. I wrote about it. It says, the father of my grandmother, Edna, on my father's side was John G. Bolton, born 1831 in Westville, New Jersey. Bolton, described as a farmer on military papers, served a 3-year enlistment with the 20th Illinois Infantry Regiment in service with the United States and was discharged in Chattanooga, Tennessee on June 12, 1864. It is believed that he returned to Joliet, Illinois, where he lived the rest of his life. And then I wrote a sidebar. It says that the following is taken verbatim from a newspaper clipping found with John Bolton's discharge papers. Old members of the 20th Illinois Infantry who remember John E. Bolton and his boy Spud. Bolton was a character in Is One Yet. He was present at the Joliet reunion, took part in the charge, and was slightly wounded. Spud was a homeless and parentless little cub whom Bolton found during the Mississippi campaign and adopted as his boy and took him along, from the Yorkville Times. I have no idea what happened to Spud. I don't know how to find out more about him.
What an interesting story. And the fact that you found that, that's amazing. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Those kind of things are priceless. But now that they are recorded, again, it will be easier. one of my grandchildren was born in Westville, New Jersey. And she and her mother and father lived there until my daughter passed away. And that town, the Westville, New Jersey, was such an important town in my life because I would go there to help my daughter get her gardens in, and go to see her, go see my grandchild. But when I go somewhere, and if there's something you want me to do, it is usually involves making you a garden, cleaning up your garden, moving your garden. That's what I do. So I became aware that Westville, New Jersey is so far ahead of itself in the recycling of all organic material. How I became incredibly aware of how they manage their trash. It was so neat. I mean, everything about it. Recycling before recycling was mandatory in some areas. Westville had put into place this incredible, the organic part of their recycling, where every leaf was ground up, every twig and branch was chipped and incorporated, and they had a place where all the residents of Westville, New Jersey could go and take your containers and fill up and take home as much compost or mulch as you wanted. It became, in one of the towns that I talked about, everywhere, and of course you find that in most places now. Out in Fairfield Glade, they have, at the end of, you go down the road by the Cumberland County Bank and you turn left at Red's, and then you go down till you're almost at a dead end and you turn left and go back through the woods. And Fairfield Glade has this incredible dumping area for leaves and organic material. Some big stuff actually gets burned up, and the ashes and the leaves and the grass clippings are all incorporated with a big bulldozer. It comes and turns the stuff and moves it over. You dump it out here, and they do what they do here, and then they mix it together, and they mix the ashes in with it, and then it ends up over here in a big pile that everybody goes and takes containers of processed compost home with them to fill up their containers. Some people add it to their gardens, So I ferret out places like that everywhere I live, so that first of all, I need to know where I can dump stuff, but the most important thing to me is to be able to go and bring home garbage cans of grass clippings and leaves. See you next week, I hope.
Yeah.
And so Westville, when you said Westville, New Jersey, it was like, wow, talk about memories that came back. Yeah, thank you. Well, we're toward the end of our day. If no one has anything, but I was absolutely serious about all of these books that I own on my shelf, that if anyone has a subject and that I have a book on that subject, there is no need to buy it, I will loan it to you. And that's something, I'm going into a new phase in my life. I actually reprinted a book because I wouldn't loan it. And, but when I saw the wealth of information that I have, that probably most libraries do not have this kind of, because I have been so focused about buying these books. So I have the books, and the two that I have today is Writing Your Life and Writing as a Road to Self-Discovery. But I have other books, and I'm sure that Reverend Dennis would not mind if you dropped off, if you borrowed some of my books, which I would bring next week and let you go through. Then when you were finished with them, if you dropped them back off here and held them for me. Okay, so it's just been a pleasure, and I hope to see you next week.